Cincinnati's ready for the Big 12. It was time for them.
I am fired up.
It's a blessing to be able to be in this league with y'all, putting on for UC.
Cincinnati, a basketball school.
And there he goes. Touchdown! Bearcats!
Raquamba again. Another slam inside.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GoBeercats podcast, part of the Catskeller Social Club. I am your host, Brandon, and we continue our Big 12 road trip this week. Once again, you can see if you're watching on YouTube, we have Landon Fields from the Rock Chalk blog, of course, from Kansas, the Jayhawks, here to talk all things that is Lawrence and everything around the programs, basketball, football, and what have you. Landon, how's it going tonight, sir?
I'm doing really well. I'm super happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of trouble. I think I reached out to you guys like one other time a couple of weeks ago when this was first getting started. And I don't know, I guess I reached out to the wrong person, but I finally, who did I get a hold of?
Well, Ryan normally runs. Yeah, he normally runs the Twitter, so that's probably who you're chatting with.
Yeah, I sent. I got a hold of Ryan. He put me in contact with you. Very happy to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about this. We got a lot to talk about. This is the first recording that we've done since Big 12 Media Days. There's a certain quarterback that kind of made waves with his chain swag, if you will.
Yes,
we'll talk about that as well. Before we get too far into it, though, Landon, this is the GoBeercats podcast, so we like to sip on a beer as we do things here. And, of course, this segment is brought to you by the Delhi Liquor Store. Whether it's beer, wine, cigars, bourbon, they have you covered no matter what. Stop in and see them for a beer on your way home or give them a like on social media. This one here is from Fretboard. One of the local breweries here in Cincinnati, Nati Dread. I know it's like 85 degrees outside right now in Cincinnati, but I was kind of bored with IPAs. I'm usually an IPA guy. I was looking for something darker here. So this is a bourbon barrel-aged stout. And I will be sipping on that throughout the episode here. I know you said you got someplace to be after this, so you're probably not sipping on anything too strong. But I will ask you off the jump here for any brewery, bar, or restaurant recommendations that you have in or around Lawrence when Bearcats eventually make that trip.
So I don't know Lawrence specifically too well. I live in the Kansas City metro area, not actually that far, only like 35, 40 minutes. Around here and in the general area, obviously, like I said, Lawrence is just down the road, really. Boulevard, a lot of people have heard of Boulevard. Boulevard is
Tank 7 is great.
Yeah, if you're in the area, you got to get you got to get some Boulevard, no matter what it is. They have lots of great options. KC Beer Co. also up here, another great option. And then I hope I don't get this wrong because it's such a famous bar. It's like the student bar, whether you're over 21 or under. In Lawrence, I think it's the Wheel, if I am not mistaken. That is the legendary spot. That's the party spot after big wins, all 3 football wins before last year. That's where you'd go to hang out. That is definitely the student hangout in Lawrence. If you're in Lawrence and you want all the vibes, go check that out. If you're in the KC area, check out Boulevard or check out KC Beer Co.
Very nice. Yeah. I'm sure the dedicated craft beer fans around Cincinnati will definitely know Boulevard. That's like one of the, maybe, I don't know if you'd call them a pioneer, but they've certainly been around long enough.
Yeah, pretty well known.
So yeah, definitely well known. Like the next thing I want to talk about here is as I take another sip with this beer here in a second is it is big and boozy. I had this one other time at Fretboard a while ago, but this is 10%, so I'll be nice and toasty here after this. Give us one. Where if Bearcats fans are looking to follow, some accounts from different schools? I know a lot of them are. Sort of give us, where can we find the blog and kind of give us the origin stories of it as well.
Yeah, at Rock Chalk Blog on Twitter. You can also follow at Ryan_Landreth. He's actually the only one of the 3 current hosts of the Inside the Paint podcast that has a Twitter active right now, funnily enough. You can find us there on Twitter for sure. The origin of Rock Chalk Blog. So I've been a part of Rock Chalk Blog since I want to say about 2016 or so. I first started writing actual like blog posts. I had what was called the Monday Notebook, just give little updates on what happened over the weekend, KU basketball, KU football, Big 12 news, stuff like that. I joined the actual podcast about a year or two after that. I've been on the podcast now for about 6 seasons. It used to be the actual blog itself has been around for a long time. Another KU beat writer, Scott Chasen, he formerly wrote for Rock Chalk Blog back in the day, several years ago now. Later on, Brian and a friend of his, they ended up buying the blog together 2013 or so, right around when Andrew Wiggins was recruited and came to Kansas. That's, I think, about when that was their first season doing the podcast was the Andrew Wiggins season at Kansas back in 2013 for basketball. And yeah, then it's taken off, and they're well over 10,000 followers now, which has been really fun to watch grow on Twitter and stuff. And yeah, we've done the podcast as the current 3 hosts for about 6 years now, and that's been a blast to do.
Very nice, very nice. I'm sure being, I mean, one of the bluest of blue bloods in college basketball. I'm sure you guys have a fair share of dedicated fans that want to know more about the team, and I'm sure some of those are hate follows as well that just are following along just to chirp in wherever possible.
Yeah, definitely so. There's a few of those for sure. Like you said, especially when KU went and they made their run, they won the national championship in 2022. There was definitely an increase in engagement of just random fans from across the country wanting to see what was up. Also, Rock Chalk Blog, particularly, and Inside the Paint, we're not like the most hard hitting like journalism KU thing. Like, we're mostly out here to have fun. Obviously, you can tell I'm bleached blonde and have a dark beard, so I'm about the vibes a lot. We're definitely known as a little bit of a hot take machine at times. I try to tone that down. Our co-host Ryan does not. He lets things fly. So we definitely not quite the black sheep, I would say, but we're definitely people know the brand, and the brand can definitely be a little bit fiery. But I think that's part of the fun, right? I think that's part of the fun of sports is knowing that it is a little bit dumb sometimes and having fun with that.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So, this is, like I said, this is the first episode we're recording since Big 12 Media Days. Through this, the Big 12 road trip that I'm calling this series, this off-season series, we usually switch it up, talk about the same thing really, but in different order. But this is, I want to get your take on the Big 12 Media Days. It was a new experience for Bearcats fans, as well as the other 3 incoming schools. The last 2 years, our media days were held over Zoom, so that was nice to be live and in person, and
right,
in Jerry's world of all places. So
yeah,
any thoughts either from a Kansas point of view or just like a Big 12 point of view overall from media days? What'd you take away?
Yeah, one thing I thought was interesting and makes a lot of sense, Kansas running back Devin, I believe it was Devin Neal, he was talking about how previously when he was at media days, he said this didn't happen specifically, but it was just kind of the vibe around the program that he sensed was everyone would kind of take you seriously to your face when you're Kansas football, but when you turned your back, you'd kind of hear the proverbial chuckle or the like, oh, it's Kansas. And he said this year, much different. People actually took them seriously as a program. People were actually interested. People were actually excited. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, or alluded to earlier, a lot of that does have to do with the quarterback, Jalon Daniels. A lot of expectations on that guy. And I think those are pretty rightful. I mean, I think he flashed so much talent, so much potential last season. But that was interesting. I thought a good takeaway from Devin Neal. And then also, I'm a big fan of what I've seen from Brett Yormark so far. The expansion talk, I've been reading a lot of expansion articles on The Athletic and ESPN over the last couple of weeks. I like his aggressiveness a lot, especially I think he knows the assignment. I think he understands the position the Big 12's in. It's going to be nearly impossible to catch the Big 10 and the SEC at this point. That's just kind of the fact of the matter. But I think he's trying to position the Big 12 to be a really interesting potential third conference. I would say the ACC is probably more solidified as that third conference at the moment. But I think the Big 12 has a good chance if they were to pursue these 4 Pac-12 schools, which they've been talking to: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, been the names. A couple other names across the country floated, but I also really liked I've liked what he's done, and I liked that was kind of the continued message from Yormark. Like, we want to be aggressive. The opportunity presents itself to be aggressive and continue to put ourselves in a better position going forward. We're going to do so. So those are the two things I think that most stood out to me. And then also Jalon Daniels highlight screen on the chain. That was number 3 for sure.
Yeah, that was a nice little piece there. That made the headlines. Definitely got people talking. I like that. I liked the whole setup really on media days. It was punctual. It was running on time. It seemed like. I think UC's coach Satterfield, I think he was scheduled to go on at 11, and I kind of turned it on at like 10 just to see exactly how far behind that they were, but they were pretty on schedule. Like right at 11 he went on. I thought that was nice.
That is a big accomplishment in college sports. It
is for sure. It's kind of interesting to hear some other podcasts take on Scott Satterfield. I've been trying to like develop an analogy for him, and I think he's just got a little bit of like Ned Flanders in him for my Simpsons watchers, or that's kind of like what I've come up with so far. So not always necessarily the most exciting guy to take a podium, but we'll see what the results are on the field this year. For Kansas, though, talk to me a little bit more about last season. 6-7 overall. I'm not just saying this because I have you on the podcast here, but I was definitely a fan of Kansas football last year. I don't know. I'm not great at searching the history of tweets, but you can go back. I was proclaiming they should be in the top 25 throughout the season. Eventually they did crack it. So
they did.
Sort of, tell me a little bit what that you talked about the 3-win seasons before, always being Texas's kryptonite though. So nothing.
Yeah, that was a fun part of those seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. But give me a little insight on last season and what that was like.
Yeah. Last season was genuinely, especially those first 5 weeks where Kansas opens up and they're 5-0. Genuinely, those 5 weeks were one of the most fun months of sports watching I've had in the last decade, probably. Like, that was because Kansas hasn't been relevant in football for 15 years. And they've had little moments where it's like they went 3-9, but it looked a little better. You see a little bit of improvement over here. And then obviously plenty of seasons where it looked like a complete abomination. But to have that season, to have that 5-0 start, to have game day of all things, come to Lawrence. I've wanted to go to a game day since I was a little kid, ever since I first understood what game day was. And actually to get that opportunity, and I did go down to game day with a buddy of mine, and we stood out in the cold for a while, and that was a blast. That was super fun. Yeah, also, at least for me, kind of out of nowhere, I think there were some people on Twitter that did have a little bit of a pulse, or they at least were able to predict, like, hey, I think Kansas might actually be better this season. But we've also heard that from so many people for so many years, predicting, hey, Kansas might be better. They might be a little bit improved. And then every year it's 3-9, 2-10, maybe worse, sometimes worse. But they did have a beat. They ended up being correct. Thank goodness they ended up being correct. But it was so much fun. The offense was a little bit different. It was this like weird pistol triple option kind of spread look a lot of the time, with they would do multiple running backs, 3 running backs in the backfield, but it was very fast paced. It was very different. I do think defenses, especially Big 12 defenses, kind of caught on to what was happening from offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki, who's been kind of a hot name, and certainly a hot name in Lawrence. He's been, I think he's done a great job. I do think defenses picked up on it a little bit as the season went, and as Jalon Daniels, he got hurt in the TCU game, which was the game day game. And then was out for most of the rest of the season, did come back at the end. But nonetheless, I mean, it was an awesome season. It was so much fun to watch. The offense actually looked the part most of the time. The defense still struggled a lot, but the defense even won them a couple games. Looking at the Iowa State game, especially 14-11 was the score there. Like, the defense stepped up and played really well, had a couple of turnovers, made some big plays. And then the bowl game, Kansas goes to his first bowl game against Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl for the first time in years and years and years. They do lose that, but Jalon Daniels threw for like 500 yards and had 6 touchdowns, and was doing things that haven't been done at Kansas since Todd Reesing was around. And that was also probably the most like fun loss I've watched a team have, maybe since like Mahomes threw 6 touchdowns against the Rams and lost 54-51. So last season was an absolute whirlwind, especially for the absolute winning desert that has been Kansas football for the last decade and a half.
So tell me a little about how that affects Memorial Stadium. If I'm correct, just under 47.5 capacity.
Yeah, it's right around there.
Yeah. So was there a shift in excitement, shift in the number of people showing up? How's that
definitely.
affected? How did that also affect the tailgating scene and all of that as well?
Oh yeah. So it's David Booth Memorial Stadium, and the hashtag Pack the Booth became a weekly occurrence after a minute. I don't go to a ton of KU football games, mostly for obvious reasons. I have been to a few in the dry years. I went to 4 of their 6 home games. I've had plans to go to another one this past season. And yeah, even the first game this past year was against Tennessee Tech. It was like an okay turnout. Most games there, you're shooting for like, if it's 3/4 full, that's amazing, and it's usually not even close to that. Definitely, like, the people that are there are excited most of the time. It's just a matter of actually getting people to the stadium. But just the way Kansas' schedule shook out this past year, they had their home game against FCS Tennessee Tech, and then they had 2 road games right after that. Obviously, they win both of those road games. And so the excitement gets to build watching your team from afar for 2 weeks, mostly 3 weeks, because the Tennessee Tech game still didn't have great attendance. But after they go 3-0, I mean, the hype was something I haven't seen, again, since like 2008. And then I did go to the Duke game, which was sold out. That was like, there were points in the Duke game, and as well as the TCU game day game, that rivaled, like, from an excitement standpoint, what I've seen in Allen Fieldhouse for basketball at times. Like, it was intense, it was loud. Obviously, you get like triple the amount of people, but nonetheless, like, it was like the atmosphere was there, and that was really awesome to see. That if this team can actually win games, like, the fan base is 100% here to support. Memorial Stadium in and of itself is definitely old. They've been talking about renovations for a while. I think it's still a mostly pretty fun place to watch a game. Definitely could use a little bit of updating, but like, when it's packed, it's fun. It's a good atmosphere, all things considered.
Very nice. Now, do you guys have beer sales in the stadium?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that got added somewhat recently, but yes, they'll push some brews through for sure.
Okay, good to hear. I've come to the realization that not all of our Big 12 brethren have that option available. So
I heard that in I listened to the Baylor episode that you did recently, and I heard that they do not sell alcohol down in Waco.
And you're not even allowed to tailgate with it at BYU. So
well,
that's why I ask. We're here to learn things and definitely see some different point of view. So what do you think? I mean, 4 new schools coming in. You have Texas and Oklahoma hanging around. Sort of a lame duck year, I guess you could call it for them. 6 and 7 last year for Kansas. What is the Kansas football fans' expectations for this year?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think this is the most important year Kansas football's had in a long time, because now if you lose and you have a bad year again, everyone's watching you have a bad year, and you had expectations. I do think the expectations, generally speaking, that I've seen are pretty reasonable. And I think realistically, you're looking at, I think generally people are wanting about 7 and 5, and probably a top. Hopefully that ends up being a top half of the Big 12 finish. The Big 12 has so much parity in the middle, though, so that really could go a lot of ways. I do think they're returning so many starters. They're returning 10 offensive starters, maybe all 11 offensive starters. They're returning a lot of starters on defense as well. Obviously, defense that wasn't great last year, but when you return players, that always helps. So I do think there are expectations to go back to a bowl game. With the 4 new schools, as you mentioned, none of them are bad in football. They may not immediately win in the Big 12 this season, but I think, historically speaking, I think that they've all had a history of winning. Some of them more recently, like a UCF, certainly, but like, they've all won double-digit games in college football recently, and 3 of them certainly have a history of doing so for longer than that. I think they're going to be great teams in the Big 12, especially in football soon. I think the recruiting will pick up pretty immediately. this year, it is going to be tough. Let me pull up KU's actual football schedule and see. I know we're playing you guys at I think it's the last game of the season.
Yep, at Nipper. You have your UCF at home and BYU at home.
Yeah. And last year they played Houston on the road.
Houston, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. It, like I said, the Big 12 just has like the middle is just so squishy. Like mostly everyone, maybe West Virginia, Iowa State, maybe expected to have more outright down seasons this year. But like after that, I mean, it feels like everyone has a chance to be bowl eligible. And then you have your maybe 3-4 teams at the top that have a little higher expectations than that. But I do think KU can legitimately, especially if they open up well. Illinois is not an easy game. That's not going to be an easy win. It is at home. You could open up potentially 3-0 on the season again, 2-1, 3-0. And if you can just go the 4-5 after that, I think you have a chance. And again, returning that many starters, I don't think 5 Big 12 wins would be insane, considering especially Kansas has had a history of upsetting, a Texas or giving some teams games, even in bad years. So now that they potentially have a legitimately decent squad, I think you could see a few more of those.
Definitely. So, I want to circle back to Jalon Daniels here for a second, and maybe Bearcats fans who aren't that familiar with him or didn't see, the highlights playing on his chain at media days. What can you tell us, or what can you describe about him that makes him so special?
Confident. He's so confident. I think it's mostly everything. I mean, his swagger is amazing. The fan base is behind him more than I've seen them behind a lot of KU basketball players, or it's equal to that. Which it's at Kansas, you kind of have to reference everything with basketball because basketball is just king far and away here. But I mean, the guy can make a lot of throws. He's not like the biggest guy. He doesn't maybe he doesn't look like, maybe he looks more like a modern NFL quarterback now that we're starting to get some smaller, quicker NFL quarterbacks. But he plays a lot like one a lot of the time. He's smart. He can make a lot of throws. He's not afraid to make ballsy throws. I think the thing about him and he's also a fantastic athlete. I mean, the dude can make tons of plays with his legs. Maybe tried to make a few too many plays with his legs last season. Okay. Got him in some trouble, but nonetheless, I mean, he's super explosive on the ground. I think a couple of the throws that most exemplify what he can do, and I hope what he can do again this season, as long as he can stay healthy, is in the Duke game, there was 2 throws. One was it's kind of pseudo Mahomes-esque, like freelance, backpedaling, turns on his back foot, fires a dime to the back of the end zone. Just the only place his receiver could get it for a touchdown. And the other reads the defense really well. The defense lets the receiver free on kind of a wheel route down the sideline and just makes an absolute bullet NFL throw across the hashes, also for a touchdown. And that was in the same game. And that might be the best game he had in the season, but nonetheless, or what you saw in the Arkansas game, where, the dude just put the team on his back and decided not to lose. The refs also helped. Kansas fans don't want to admit that, but the refs definitely I don't know what was going on at the end of that game for the Zebras. But nonetheless, he still just stepped up and just decided to make every play, make every throw, and not let his team die. And that's what he's really, really good at, is just, unlike any quarterback that Kansas has had, he can just make plays happen, whether that's on the ground or through the air. And for a lot of other Big 12 teams, that's something they get on a pretty regular basis. But at Kansas, it feels like we've actually gotten to that point now with this guy. We have a guy that can actually go out and win you a game just by being who he is. And again, like I said, the confidence and the swagger, he's such a personable guy. He seems like a really great guy. I'd love to get a chance to talk to him before he leaves the program. But no, he's really everything you look at in your leading man at a program, honestly.
Well, very nice. So, Kansas does come to Cincinnati right after Thanksgiving this year, last game of the season. So that'll be interesting. But what do you think, looking at the schedule for this year, let's just, keep it for home games. If the team does start out that 3-0, which home game on the schedule, do you think fans will, show up and kind of get more rowdy for than any of the others?
Oh, K-State, without a doubt,
K-State.
K-State. If Texas was at home, fans will usually show up for Texas, but K-State, Kansas has not beaten K-State in quite a long time now. I think it's 9 or 10 years, right around there. K-State has quite a winning streak against the Jayhawks. That game got nearly sold out in Memorial Stadium. I guess it was about 4 years ago now, and that was off Kansas like playing one team close and beating Texas Tech, and K-State came to town and it was like 80-90% full. That was a lot of K-State fans too, but that's definitely the game to circle. K-State's going to have a good team this year. They're talented. Will Howard's coming back. They do lose some pieces, but that's going to be a good K-State team. But that if KU does have anywhere close to the season that I hope they have, even if they enter that game like 5-5, that's going to be an absolute madhouse.
Very nice. I like to hear that. So, sort of, I talked to the guys from the Aggieville Alley Cats last week, the K-State podcast. So, I'm trying to get a feel for the rivalries around the Big 12. Unfortunately, I've learned that there's not a ton of trophy games or any at all. But I would love to see Yormark take up that and sort of get that started. I think there's plenty that have potential for something like that to happen. But would you say Kansas State, at least in football, or maybe you can talk in basketball and football in general, that the biggest rival you guys have in the Big 12?
Yeah, in the Big 12, Missouri's been out of the league now for a long time. Mizzou maybe even still remains the most purely hated rival that Kansas has. But within the Big 12, it's weird with K-State because, like I said, K-State has like a decade-long winning streak against Kansas in football. But the reverse is almost true in basketball. K-State has beaten Kansas several times, but Kansas just absolutely dominates K-State in basketball. So while the fan bases definitely have a rivalry, neither like actual individual contest has been very competitive over the last number of years. I would still say that's school for school. That's definitely number one. Basketball gets really interesting a lot of the time because Kansas, obviously, in basketball, they're often number one in the standings in the league, or, they're always the team to beat, regardless if they're literally number one or not. They're definitely the team with the target on their back. So some really fun rivalries have developed there. Baylor has become a rival for sure in basketball. That's been a lot of fun. Their programs surged and won a national championship, which has been fun to watch. So that's been a cool one. I have always loved, especially back in the Fred Hoiberg days at Iowa State basketball, the Iowa State-Kansas basketball rivalry. It was really fun. Hilton Coliseum up in Ames. Yeah. I haven't been there personally. I would love to go. It's a really rowdy atmosphere. They get really into it, especially when Kansas comes to town. And they had some great teams back then. They've had some pretty good teams recently as well. So that's a fun one that I enjoy. But also, and everyone hates Texas. So kind of Texas. And KU, like you said, has been Texas's kryptonite, gotten them a couple times over the last few years. So that's been fun. So Texas is kind of there, but definitely school for school. It's K-State. Very nice.
So are there any, you can talk about this in sort of the broad form as well, but what are some like Kansas traditions that you think are kind of cool or unique to the school, whether it's the school in general or athletic related?
Athletically, the most obvious one is certainly the Rock Chalk Chant. You haven't really lived until you've experienced the Rock Chalk Chant inside a packed Allen Fieldhouse on a Monday night in January. It's chill inducing. It's amazing. Unfortunately, I didn't actually go to Kansas. I'm completely a poser in that regard. I like them. My dad went to Kansas. I have a Kansas, thing right up here. So I get, I kind of count. So I know during graduation, there's the hill right on the open end of Memorial Stadium. All the seniors will, I believe, run down the hill. This is how uneducated I am about actual University of Kansas, having not been there. But that is definitely a tradition. The football team used to walk down the hill before games. They might still. It's just become kind of less of a thing. They used to actually do like a whole walk before they entered the stadium for a game. Now it's just more of a hype video, and then they run out. But that kind of stuff's cool. There is, I'm gonna have to Google this one thing because there is a really cool, what's it called? Oh, the Campanile. Yeah, the Campanile. It's a bell tower that you can see from the Kansas football stadium. Whenever they score a touchdown, the Campanile will ring. So that's a cool thing. Everyone recognizes that. Kansas will use like a bell sound from that in a lot of their like hype videos and promotional material. So that's a pretty neat one. Yeah, I mean, definitely the Rock Chalk chant. Everyone knows the Rock Chalk chant for the most part. If you follow college sports anyway, you know what that is. But
yeah,
there's some other fun ones. The band will like run out from the actual like concourse in the bowl end of Memorial Stadium on a football game day. They'll line up like actually in the concourse and run out onto the field from the stands. That's kind of fun to watch. But this is going to be a screaming hot take. People will be mad, but I say stuff like this all the time, so it's okay. I'm fine with it. And I'm not on Twitter, so there's no consequences really. I find like 70 to 80% of college sports traditions to be a little bit corny. And for some people, that is 100% why they love them. And that is completely understandable, and more power to you. I'm not here to rain on your parade. For me personally, every time I watch, like, you get down, because NFL season, college football season, almost one and the same, minus a few weeks. I'll be watching, the Chiefs on Sunday and Red Zone to watch all the games for the NFL. And it's like just this such professional, buttoned up, like intense thing. And then I watch college sports, and we have guys in what amount to basically tuxedos playing the tuba on the field pregame. I'm like, this is not quite the same product. But I mean, again, for some people, that's 1,000,000% the draw. And I don't hate it by any stretch, but I do find it like a little bit goofy, I guess. But it is fun. So, I don't know what any of that means, but that is my take.
Very nice. Well, let's transition to basketball season. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the historic, legendary Phog Allen Fieldhouse. I hope to catch a game there when the Bearcats are in town. I wanted to go season 1, but I coach basketball myself, and I don't know if I will have. There's no way I'm lucky enough for it to be like during one of our breaks or something. So I'm prepared to miss it this year at least, but I hope to get there. Give me the atmosphere though. It's Kansas is ranked number 1 in the country. You have Baylor coming to town or something like that. What tell us what it's like inside that field.
Yeah, it is. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get to a game of such magnitude. But even for games that aren't, I mean, the place seats 16,300, and it's 16,300 like every home game. Obviously, like Lafayette comes to town, maybe it's 16,100. But any Big 12 game, that place is packed. The students will camp out before the games to get their seats. The student section is always full. I mean, it's as raucous an environment that you will find in sports, period. I have been there to watch them play K-State. I've been there to watch them play Missouri just a couple of years ago. And it's an incredible atmosphere. I did get to catch them in their double overtime win over Texas Tech in the year they won the national championship. Ochai Agbaji had 37 points in that game. And of course, double overtime. I mean, that like Ochai Agbaji hits a 3 with like 6 seconds left in the first overtime to tie it, to send it to the double overtime. And they play very famous sports song, Kerncraft 400. If anyone knows that off the top of their head, you will know the song. If you don't know the name, just Google it. You'll definitely know that. And like my breath was almost taken away by how just like the roof was going to blow off of the stadium in between overtimes. Like this was 2 minutes after the shot was actually hit. This is just like the commercial break. And like the building's going to fall apart because everyone's going just bananas. They also play the Hum, the EDM song, the Hum. Most people know the Hum too. If you don't know the name, Google it, you know the song. At every under 4 timeout of the second half, and that's very much that's kind of a tradition for basketball and football to do that. That's pretty religiously done, and that's another just like if you have small kids, bring them earphones because like bad things are going to happen to that if they're not. It's loud. It is so much fun, and the really cool thing is like the energy is up for if they play like number 3 in the country, Baylor comes to town, or if it's unranked on a down year, Texas Tech comes to town. It's almost the same energy. Obviously, in better games, it gets louder later, and that's always really fun to watch. But like the intensity is just something that like I really haven't seen, and I have access to some amazing venues like Arrowhead Stadium. I've been to several times. Obviously, Allen Fieldhouse. I've been to Royals games when they were good, and that was a lot of fun. And been to some other places. I've been to Lambeau Field. That was only for a preseason game, but like Allen Fieldhouse is as good as any place I've been. It's an amazing spot.
Very nice. Well, I mean, the team, throughout this past season looked, phenomenal at times. I put several players in the NBA this summer at the draft. 28-8 overall. I believe that was 13-5 in the gauntlet that is the Big 12. You guys lose Coach Self to some health issues, and maybe he was going to come back for the tournament. Maybe he wasn't. It turns out that, he didn't come back for it. And then you guys lost. That's weird that you guys lost to Arkansas in the bowl game. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you lost to Arkansas in the round of 32.
That is correct.
So they kind of had your number this year for whatever season or for whatever reason. But sort of take me through this season. Coming off of national championship year, how was this season, different from that, other than, Self kind of having to remove himself from the team?
Yeah, expectations going into the season are always high for basketball, but they were very high coming off national.
I wonder why.
Yeah, no particular reason. But expectations were about that high again. They pull in freshman recruit Grady Dick, very highly touted. It looks like they're going to have a really solid team. Jalen Wilson returns. He was a key contributor on that national title team. He has a fantastic season. Puts up some scoring numbers that set records this season, which is very impressive to do as a program as caliber as Kansas. The season as a whole was very much a season of ups and downs. They start off the season brilliantly, and then they have their first 3-game losing streak in a long time. Then they finish the season pretty well. Some weird losses. They lose to Texas twice, both at the end of the regular season and in the conference title game in Kansas City. Depth was something that really hurt Kansas basketball this past season. Their bench just like really could not score consistently. And that is something that really hampered them throughout the year. Their kind of core group, that Jalen Wilson, Grady Dick, a couple other names, were great, pretty consistently great most of the season. You kind of knew what you were getting from them. It was just a question of, can the people coming off the bench provide anything for you? And on nights where that was true, they were almost unbeatable. Like they would have, if they could have gotten that 6 games in a row, they would have been the national champions again. But then that was the thing. That was pretty impossible to get this past season, which was unfortunate. But Bill Self, as he is wont to do, like you mentioned, the health problems, he was out. Some people also attributed that. I think Bill Self's probably worth 1 basket at minimum to beat a team like Arkansas. So hopefully, I like to think they would have gotten farther had Bill Self been on the sideline. Obviously, an unfortunate situation, but he is back and appears to be in the driver's seat of the program for quite a while still. He doesn't seem to appear to be close to retirement, although the rumors always float that he's going to go coach the Spurs or something.
He has a lifetime contract, right? He has like a rolling contract.
Yeah, they just signed him a lifetime contract, which if you would have asked me 3 years ago if that was a good idea, I would have said foolishly no. But then he won a national championship and clearly proved his worth by being gone. So he'll be on contract for as long as he desires to be, which according to him is going to be for quite a number of seasons, it seems. But he went out and he recruited his butt off. He went and got Hunter Dickinson, the number 1 transfer on the market from Michigan. The guy averaged like 19 and 10 last season at the center position, and Kansas landed him. Maybe the most skilled scoring big man that Kansas has had. I don't even know. It's been a long time since they've had a guy that like potentially this good. First team All-American is not an insane thing to predict for a guy like this. He's going to be a really unfortunate thing to have happen to the rest of the schools. So I apologize for what he may or may not do to the Bearcats come January and February. It might get a little bit ugly down there, but Cincinnati has a really solid basketball program though. They have a history of winning too. So I think they're going to have actually a really solid chance to be good in the Big 12 soon. But Bill Self reloaded. He went and got some freshmen, some really solid freshmen, which actually one just left the program a couple days ago, kind of out of nowhere. He reclassified from the 2024 class to this class just to play, and then he was at boot camp for like 3 weeks and decided to leave for some reason. So I don't know what the deal with that is, but otherwise, it's been a pretty solid offseason. Both freshmen, some transfers, some really interesting pieces, getting a couple returning players here and there as well. Definitely going to be a lot of new faces in Allen Fieldhouse. I think it ended up being like 2 returning scholarship players when it was all said and done, and everyone else new, or something like that, like less than 5, which is pretty remarkable for a program like this. Normally, even like a Kentucky, where the program seems to turn over like every 2 years, you get more than that, and they clean shop. But a lot of fun and a lot of exciting faces. Certainly, once again, for better or worse, Kansas fans do not know how to temper their expectations when it comes to basketball, and so they remain untempered.
Very nice. Very nice. I know. I mean, it seems like all the meaningful transfers throughout college basketball, they landed in the Big 12. I mean, you bring up the kid from Michigan, and I mean, you look across the. I mean, like UC, like Wes Miller went out, and over half of our roster, I think, is either incoming freshmen or guys he got from the portal. So, and I mean, I know Texas Tech brought in some guys, Kansas State as well.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking to those guys last week, and it seems like all the meaningful transfers came to the Big 12, and for good reason. It's the best basketball conference in college basketball. I think it will certainly carry that title this year as well. Even with teams like UCF coming in, who aren't going to offer the conference much, but
yeah, they're gonna struggle for a while. It's gonna be a rough couple of years, unfortunately. But even TCU, who came into the Big 12 and was outright bad for a handful of years. I mean, there was Final Four talk with TCU this past season. Like they've become a genuinely solid basketball program at TCU. So if TCU can flip from being, I think they had like an 0-18 Big 12 year or something close. It was bad. It was rough. So if that can happen at Texas Christian University with a stadium of like 5,000 people, I think the largest campus in America, in Orlando, Florida, for UCF can probably recruit inevitably and turn that ship around. But yeah, I wouldn't expect too much if you're a Golden Knights fan.
Yeah, still, if you're a Hilton Knight manager, just hold on to that D2 1978 national championship or whatever it was that the Gambling Gauchos put up. So I'm sure they can hold on to that for a couple more years. I do want to ask you though, I mean, like I said, basketball. I'm more excited for basketball this season. Football for the Bearcats has had the momentum for a while now. Fickle's left. We're in a new conference. We're hoping to be bowl eligible. I think that's a decent expectation. But basketball, we lost Cronin. We went through the Brandon years, and now Wes Miller. I think we've all bought in on him, and we are. Although we're not going to win as many games, I think we should be back to a tournament team where we spent like 17 years in a row in the Big Dance. So I think we should return there this year. That's our expectations. I know they're lofty. It's the seventh circle of hell that is Big 12 basketball. With the roster he put together, we'll find out. We are a basketball school, and it's awesome to be in a conference with a blue blood where I think Bearcats fans are definitely going to look forward when Kansas comes to Fifth Third. That one I think will be one of the more rowdy of the basketball season, and then we'll see what happens when we go to Phog Allen as well.
So does the fan base actually reflect that in Cincinnati? Like, are you guys does the fan base actually consider Cincinnati more of a basketball school than a football school?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay,
definitely. I'm in my early 30s. Maybe if you went to or grew up, and the 2009 football team was like your first exposure to Bearcats football, you might think differently. But
is that the team that got rocked by Tim Tebow?
Yeah, that was 12-0 until they. Yeah, that was Texas's fault as well, or Nebraska's fault. I forget who. Nebraska missed the field goal or something. I forget. That was Big 12 related. That ended up screwing us over. We had to play pissed off Tim Tebow, so that didn't go well for us. But yeah, I think historically anyone maybe 25 years or older would say that UC is 100% a basketball school and even though football's been on the up, basketball is where the fans' hearts lie. Well, I mean, kind of like, I mean, we don't have, I mean, the Cavaliers professionally were terrible until 2003.
Right.
And I think even then the Pacers are the closer team to Cincinnati, but no one's really going to claim that being it, in Indiana. So, I mean, and don't get me started on Xavier. They're that's not a basketball program. So yeah, I mean, Cincinnati was the only ticket in town for basketball for quite some time. So definitely, I mean, if that's a hot take to some of you listening, please DM me. I want to talk to you because I would definitely say it's a basketball school.
Interesting. No, that makes sense. I mean, you look at like the all-time win counts, and I'm always surprised to see how high Cincinnati actually is on those. Like they've won a lot of basketball games in their program history.
Yeah, we were top 10 in wins for a long time, and just recently, I don't know, like we're like 13th or 14th now, maybe. Just recently fell out of there. But we'll figure that out. So I forget who put out this graphic, but they put out maybe the all-time wins list in the new Big 12, and Cincinnati was right behind Kansas. And
that makes sense.
I screenshotted that. I was like, I'm going to keep that for if things don't go well for us this basketball season. I'll try to hold on to that. But we've talked football, we've talked basketball. Is there a third sport that you would say Kansas excels at, or the fans get excited for outside of football and basketball?
Yeah, most recently it's been volleyball. Pavilion, I think it's Pavilion, Horse Pavilion, connected to Allen Fieldhouse. Actually, you can walk from Allen Fieldhouse, not go outside and go directly into Horse. They had, I'll have to actually look it up, but I don't remember their exact record. But they did have a really solid season just recently. They were really good. People do get pretty excited for the volleyball team. They've had several good years recently. Even then, I still don't think they quite come close to like football and basketball. That's of course just kind of going to be true, unless you're like Boston College hockey or something. That and your Boston College football.
That's their number one sport. Yeah,
right. Exactly. Like that. That just can't be helped. But volleyball at Kansas. I'd like to go to a game as well there. I haven't been able to make it out. I do enjoy a good volleyball game now and again. It's a fun sport to watch. That people definitely get excited for that. There is baseball. I don't ever hear too much about baseball. But some people do get excited for that. They've had a couple good seasons recently. They did make the college tournament not too long ago. And then the women's team, women's basketball team, that is, just won the women's NIT this past year. I did go to a couple of those games. That was fun. We got we did get our revenge against Arkansas. It was in the women's NIT.
There you go.
So you take what you get. But that was really fun. They did win the tournament there, and they played those in Allen Fieldhouse. And obviously women's basketball, especially when you have a very good men's program, unless again like your UConn women's basketball or something, the turnout is less. But I think the final number was like 11,000 people showed up for that women's NIT championship game, and it was a really fun atmosphere. It was a pretty solid turnout. And the women's basketball team has been on the up. They've hired a new coach recently, and he seems to have things going in the right direction there. So that's kind of been fun to watch. But yeah, volleyball definitely. When the volleyball team is good, you definitely hear buzz about that. That's a fun one to watch at Kansas.
Very nice. Now, here's a new question I haven't asked any other guests on the podcast for this series. Are there any sports or individual sport that Kansas does not have that you would like to see them add to the lineup?
Well, so personally, I have no clue if even more than 10 people would share this opinion. But if Kansas got a men's ice hockey team, I would lose my mind. So I grew up in Michigan. My dad worked at a small university in Michigan called Northern Michigan, which is way up in a tiny town of like 20,000. And I still follow they have a D1 college hockey team because there's only like 60 D1 college hockey teams in America. So they have to take like D2 and even a couple D3 to like get us like serviceable D1 to work. So you get like, Boston College will play like Union, which is like some random D3 team in New York. But Northern Michigan has a hockey team, and I still pay attention to them, and they're brutal to watch because they're the most average team ever. They're like, they can win enough games to get your hopes up, but they're barely ever good enough to actually fulfill your hopes. So you're constantly crushed. You constantly don't make the NCAA tournament, and you constantly don't win your conference. But if Kansas got a hockey team, that would be so much fun to actually watch them compete. College hockey, like, no, who cares about college hockey outside of like Michigan, Minnesota, and the Ivy League schools? Me, I guess. So yeah, hockey, definitely. They have a club team, which they play Mizzou in club hockey, which I'll have to go watch one of these days. But yeah, that's a totally random one that no one will agree with. I would imagine maybe like wrestling would be the answer for more people in the Midwest. Wrestling's pretty popular in the Midwest.
Sure.
Maybe that would be it, but I'd watch people on skates with pucks and sticks all day.
Very nice. I like that. I'm adding that to the list of questions from here on out. I certainly like that.
Cincinnati is actually in a great spot to have a hockey team. I feel like in Ohio, they would have some natural rivals just north of the border in Michigan, not too far. Yeah. They'd have an interesting schedule over there.
Yeah, there's the Cincinnati Cyclones. I don't know where they lie in the pecking order of things, but I've been to watch one of their, was it a game or a match? I don't know.
A game, yeah.
A game. So I've been down there once. They on certain nights they had like $1 Natty Lights and $1 Miller High Life. So that was a good time. I think I was in college when I went, but yeah, I mean they have an arena to play, so why not? That's good. I think answering the question myself, I would like to see I like to see softball. We don't have a softball team. Or we could bring back men's soccer. We cut that during COVID, so I know a lot of people are kind of upset about that. So
that'd be fun.
But yeah, Landon, though, I certainly appreciate your time here. Coming up on the hour mark here. I really only have one more question here for you. It's a gambling question. I don't know if you do any sports betting here, but it is this question is brought to you by the Bet Stamp app. It not only allows you to line shop so you can find the best odds on any game across all sports books, but it also tracks all of your bets in one location. So download the app and be sure to use the referral code GoBeercats. So if we rewind to football season here, Landon, and I give you Texas and TCU or the field to win the Big 12 in football this year, who are you taking?
To have them win this upcoming season for 2023-24?
Yes.
1,000,000% Texas.
Really?
I'm selling every ounce of stock on TCU. I know they've hit the portal. I think Sonny Dykes is a good coach. I know people are really high on him. Obviously, they just had a great season. That's fine. At a program like TCU, I have trouble believing that you can lose as much as they've lost and have that same level of success. Now, fast forward 2 or 3 years, maybe they have rebuilt, they have more program continuity again, and maybe they can win 10, 11, 12 games again. So it's more of I just don't think TCU is going to be that again, because I will not believe Texas is back until they actually are back, and they're never going to do it in the Big 12, thank goodness, unless they actually do it this year, which would kind of suck for that take. But Texas is going to have a good team this year, I think, as long as Quinn Ewers can actually not overthrow his receivers, which was kind of a humongous problem for him in several games. So if he can actually keep the ball down, which is normally a pitching term, but he has to do it. Quinn Ewers has to keep the ball down in order to be effective. He is super talented, though. If he would have stayed healthy, Texas beats Alabama. He was absolutely,
that was a great game.
He was dealing for a quarter, and then he goes out, and they still almost got him. So I think he has the potential certainly to be a fantastic player. But I'll take Texas.
All right, very nice. I certainly look forward to playing you guys in all the upcoming sports seasons. I will certainly reach back out, see if we can't do another collab here in the near future, maybe during either football or basketball season, and see if we can't do this again. Yeah, no, please do. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Absolutely. One more time, where can we find you guys on the socials? Yeah, be sure to check out at Rock Talk Blog on Twitter. Be sure to listen to the Inside the Paint podcast, definitely on Spotify and on probably Apple Podcasts now, because is iTunes, does people even use iTunes anymore? Apple Podcasts, check that out. I think pretty much wherever you listen to your podcast, definitely those two for sure. Check us out there. Give us a rating, give us a review. We have some funny reviews, so add to the pot. Yeah, we'd love to have you guys check us out, even if it's just for when we take on the Bearcats. I always like to see the listener count go up. I always like to know people are actually paying attention to the goofy little thing that we do. So yeah, be sure at Rock Chalk Blog and Inside the Paint. Definitely. All right. Well, until next time, everyone, appreciate you listening. Cheers and go Bearcats.